Looking across the seemingly endless landscape of northern Nevada, a person can see for miles. Today, this dry and rugged terrain supports only the hardiest flora and fauna. But look closely at the landscape and you'll notice telltale horizontal stripes that indicate ancient shorelines of Pleistocene Lake Lahontan. The marshland along the edge of this huge lake once supported a thriving ecosystem, and there's evidence that humans took advantage of those resources almost 10,000 years ago.
Hello, this is Linsie Lafayette with the Archaeological Conservancy. I'm the Western Field Representative. Thanks for joining us here in Lovelock, Nevada. That's in the northern portion of Nevada. I'm here at our Leonard Rock Shelter preserve, which we acquired in 2002. This rock shelter was formed due to the wave action from Pleistocene Lake Lahontan over 9,000 years ago. There's a large valley below us that there's a nice view of, and as you can see, it's very shady in the daytime since it's east facing. It would have been a nice place for people to live and work.
In the September 1951 issue of American Antiquity, archaeologist Robert Heiser describes the geology of the site by saying, "This tufa crust has peeled off in some areas and dropped huge sheets of material within the rock shelter area, thus preventing effective archaeology. Our work was mainly in those restricted portions where the tufa was still affixed to the cliff face and the deposits beneath were diggable."
So this is down there is where the excavations happened in 2018 and 2019 anyway. So Leonard Rock Shelter sits at about 4,200 feet above sea level. And you see it has a nice view of the valley below, which is the Humboldt River sink. That means that the river doesn't go to the ocean. It doesn't go to another lake. It just flows and then empties out there. As a side note, this is also where the California Trail went through, just below down in the valley, in that sand that you can see in front of us. And this would be the start of the 40-mile desert for their journey back then. But for when people lived at Leonard, it would have been a much more wet environment with a marshy wetland with birds that they could hunt and lots of other edible items that come along with marshlands. Here at Leonard, it was first discovered in the 30s by guano miners. And they're the ones who first discovered the artifacts that came out. And so then there were a few tests done in the 30s originally. And then in the 1950s, archaeologists returned. And this site is only the second site that radiocarbon dating was used because it was newly invented, I think, in 1949. And so they got dates of 11,000 years ago on the bat guano. And then they also dated, since radiocarbon was new and they didn't know exactly how to use it, they found atlatls in their excavation and they combined all of the atlatls and got one single date of about 8,000 years ago. These early radiocarbon dates attracted the attention of Dr. Jeffrey Smith at the University of Nevada, Reno, with the group, the Great Basin Paleoindian Research Unit, now known as Artemisia Archaeology Research Fund. He and his students came in 2018 and 2019 to investigate the earlier deposits of the cave and to see if they date down to the terminal Pleistocene, early Holocene era. And in doing so, they looked at the notes of the previous excavations, and Jeff often called that the archaeology of archaeology because they had to relocate the previously excavated pits and try and place their pits on top of them and use historic photos to see the stratigraphy that they would be digging into. Also, they found different items that would have been from this excavation, including flash bulbs from 1950s cameras and burlap sacks that they used to store artifacts in, which was confusing because they had to, they first thought that they were basketry and later realized that they were just burlap sacks from the 1950s. So as far as other rock shelters that I've personally dug in and that I've read about, there really wasn't much to be found in this one. But they did find olivella beads, which would have been traded from the coast. So that is an example of how far they traded for some items. They found a cordage fragment, a small amount of flakes, one obsidian biface, and and that's kind of it. They didn't find much. So basically what you can say about it is that the cave was periodically visited during the early Holocene and predominantly utilized for storing gear. So while they didn't find these items in the units that they opened up, the previous excavations found atlatls and basketry, cradle boards and things like that, fragments of those. So this one was different than, I think, the typical rock shelter and what you might find. And while the mission of the Conservancy is to preserve archaeological remains for research, research doesn't always mean excavation. It can be in other forms such as LiDAR or obsidian sourcing. And if you have any research proposals, you can submit them to us and we'll let our board review them and see if they meet our goals and mission.